All right, Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Today I have Huda Ibrahim. She is one of the stars in the Muslim matchmaking show on Hulu. And so the way I found out about her is a bunch of my clients told me, like, you got to watch the show. Like, Lema, you're going to really like the show. I was like, "Ugh, I'm not into reality TV shows, but fine, I'll watch it." And so then, okay, I watched it and I was like, okay, this is really good. Like, I really loved just seeing the different examples, the different diversity, the way things are set up, the way you told people, like, hey, just give this a shot. And all of that was just really, like, it was brilliant. And honestly, I use some of those character examples as like showing my clients, like, hey, like, look, she's more on the avoidant side, or look more on the anxious attachment side, and this is why it's happening this way, right? So, so it
I
was really,
love that. I love
yeah.
that.
So
I'm so
it's
glad you gave it a chance.
yeah, yeah. Alhamdulillah, I really liked it, and now I just recommend people to watch it. Just it just helps to understand what other people are go through, because sometimes people feel like they're alone in this process, um, and I sometimes they're like, well, I don't know where to go to find a person or anything like that. So first things first, you guys, Huda has a Muslim matchmaking service, and I usually don't recommend services unless like it's someone I see or know, and clearly she's not like an old auntie that doesn't know what she's doing. She has a lot of success, and alhamdulillah, I would highly recommend checking her out. And Huda, I just wanted to ask you, like, what do you think is one of the hardest things about matching people up?
Gosh, I mean, I've been doing this for several years now, like maybe 8 years professionally, and then so many years before that as a hobby. And it's interesting because the landscape has changed a lot from when I first started doing this professionally to now. Enter the swipe dating culture, enter all the like social media complications or all the things social media can complicate about our lives. And I think what all of this has created that has made just the entire kind of realm of matchmaking or courting or dating, for lack of a better term, has set up this unrealistic expectations, essentially. I am like facing that front and center all day, every day with my clients. People assume that, meeting the one is going to look a certain way. It's going to feel a certain way. You're going to have this instant chemistry and this spark, and you're going to have this like highlight reel Instagram perfect life with this person. And anything that doesn't measure up to that must be wrong, right? That's I think what people really truly believe and truly feel. And so trying to set people up for success, a huge part of it is also just setting the right expectations of what does it actually look and feel like when you meet somebody that has serious potential.
Yeah. So, like, often the questions I get is, well, what if I'm not physically attracted, and or what if I'm not, um, I'm not attracted enough from the first time? And I just want to hear what are your thoughts on that?
Oof, that one is hard because I am definitely of the camp where I feel attraction, physical attraction is important. I think it's really hard to build an emotional connection if you don't feel any physical attraction.
Mhm.
But with that said, do you have to be like jaws on the floor when you first see somebody? Absolutely not. I think if you feel like a little bit of like, oh, you know what, maybe they're cute, like I'd be willing to give this a chance. I think that that's enough where you can build off of it, or it can detract, if you get to know them and they're terrible, it might take away from that attraction. So I think there does have to be a baseline of attraction there for sure, but I don't think that you need to find this person as the most beautiful person you've ever spoken to or feel like they're a 10 out of 10 right away. I do think attraction can grow or decline.
Yeah. And oftentimes I find, like, first of all, personal experience, when I saw my husband, I was like, I don't know about this. And really he was just not dressed right, and I didn't really like the way he styled his hair, all the things. And so my brain immediately was like, hell no, like this is not going to work. I was so resistant. And I also see other examples of couples that had the same experience, right? In the beginning, they're like, I don't think this is going to work. And the reason I'm sharing this is, like, sometimes people just like completely like block, like, nope, this is not going to work, and the resistance really comes up. And sometimes when you challenge that resistance and really like pinpoint what is it that you're saying no to, well, no, his hair isn't like, or like his nose isn't like as nice as I want it, or it's too big, or this, like, and like they start pinpoint, like, nitpicking on things. That's when you start seeing them as a checklist rather than like a human being to fall in love with. And I think, like, what do you think about that? Like, what do you think when it comes to physical attraction and stuff like that?
Yeah, I mean, I think what you said is right. Sometimes you nitpick, right? You have this idea in your head of what, that 10 out of 10 looks like guy or girl. I think what a lot of women have working against them is like Instagram filters, and men are can be really like silly in the sense where they don't know that a girl wearing like a full face of makeup and whatever is not like the average look. Like I
Mhm.
run into that a lot where it's like you have just like mashallah, beautiful, normal, everyday people who are not caked in tons of makeup and eyelash extensions and all the things. And they don't know that there's like a difference of like when somebody is wearing this full face of makeup and somebody isn't, and like what's an ordinary person like. And so a lot of women have to kind of work against that, and it's unfair. And on the other side, you have men who just sometimes they just need a little bit of help, like they just need to like up their style a little bit. They need to get Invisalign. They
Yeah.
need a better fade in their hair. And I think as a matchmaker, I think I have a trained eye to see those things of like, okay, is there like potential or little things that can be tweaked? And sometimes that's important. Like part of my job is helping somebody put their best foot forward. Like you want to present yourself authentically, but also in the best way that you can. And I don't mean that to be fake, but are there things that you can better about yourself outwardly sometimes that will, help your chances in getting you an introduction with somebody that could be really good for you?
Yeah,
But
yeah.
yeah, no, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna ask, like, um, other than like physical looks, sometimes the questions that I get is like, okay, what if like he's not the same intellectual level as me? Like I'm smarter. I have like, more degrees, more of that. And he maybe doesn't make as much money as me, and everything's great. It's just that. And so what are your thoughts on that?
I think people really have to look within first. I think you have to kind of have a conversation with yourself of what is important to you and why. Are the degrees important because you care about a certain status? Is the degree actually contributing to their intellect? Have you given it enough time to see if you're on the same, intellectual level or not? Are you looking for somebody with a certain amount of income because you want to live a certain lifestyle? Are you able to already provide that lifestyle for yourself? I think there's so many questions you have to ask yourself versus just kind of like kind blindly accepting and regurgitating, kind of the mantra or the ideas that you've been fed and just telling yourself as you're going through this process. I think it's really important to, as you go through the process of getting to know more people, maybe if it doesn't work, with the first person you talk to, which often it doesn't. And, I talked to many clients who have been in this process of looking to meet somebody for marriage for years. And I've had clients where I talked to them a few years ago for whatever reason, either I didn't find them somebody or it didn't work out or, and then they come back to me years later and I haven't seen any change in their mindset. I haven't seen any growth. And I think it's so important to remind people to have these conversations with yourself and truly, truly, truly reevaluate over and over again your criteria. Not because like I'm telling you like you need to settle or you need to compromise or whatever, but it's just important as you grow to think about, are the things that I'm looking for actually serving me? Are they going to serve me in a long-term and happy marriage?
Yes, I love that because um, kind of to add on to that, when someone is operating from their ego, the ego is looking for a certain image, a certain perfectionistic image that kind of is there to fill a void. And we're not even taught these things. We're not taught like this is something coming from your ego. It's just not something you saw either on the internet or somewhere that you're supposed to ask for this, or that these kind of qualities will add to your value as a human being. And so when the brain is really insistent on like this is what it has to be like, I will like I've heard, right, there's some people who are really insistent, like I will never marry someone who's divorced. I will never marry someone who's like this that, and they're very insistent on that. And what I
Mhm.
found is people who are more secure are a lot more flexible in their mindset and the way they go about things. And for I'm saying this for people listening, if you feel something like really rigid on something, it's just, is this part of your values or is this part of your ego? and and really questioning that will help you get to where you need to be, because same with like what Huda said, I've seen people who stay years and years in their 40s 50s sometimes, like just like, no, I'm not changing my mindset, I don't want to settle. And settling doesn't mean like not being flexible on certain things, it just means
Absolutely.
settling is probably going against something, against your values. We're not saying that. We're saying more of maybe the the person that Allah sent you is wrapped in a very different way than you expected.
Absolutely. The checklist, while it's good to like have things in mind that are important to you, the checklist isn't everything. Okay.
Yes.
You don't, sometimes you'll meet somebody that checks every single box, but there's nothing there. There's no substance, there's no emotional connection, there's no shared vulnerability or shared values they're able to build off of. And I've seen people marry that person. They married the checklist person. And where did it end up? Not in a happy, fulfilling, loving marriage. Absolutely not. And I think just having a flexible mindset and being open to the idea that first of all, what is feeding your checklist, I think is really important. It's important to know like what is feeding this checklist that I have? Is it my parents? Is it my culture? Is it my actual values? Is it social media? Is it things that I've been just told to look for? Or I've heard that XYZ is not good, so I'm not even going to think about that. It's really important to evaluate what is feeding your checklist and what actually comes from within. Um, but being open to the idea of somebody that isn't, fitting your checklist could be the right person for you. I mean, it happened to me. Like, did I ever, if somebody had asked me, like, hey, would you marry at 21 years old, would you marry somebody in Germany and move abroad to a country you've never even visited before? You think anybody would say, like, yeah, I'm open to that? Absolutely not. It was not on my checklist by any means. I probably, if you'd asked me then, I would have wanted somebody really close. I would have wanted to stay near my family, all the things that expectedly anybody wants. But, alhamdulillah, here I am 8 years later, 2 kids in. The journey has been incredible. Ups and downs, absolutely. But was he my like checklist guy as far as like the obvious things? No.
No, no. And by the way, you rock the pregnancy. You're glowing every time you're pregnant. It was so yeah.
Oh, I wish I could have that glow now.
So one of the things that so okay, so here comes the next question. Like, all right, so what actually matters in a marriage? Because I remember when I was single, I was told like I really wanted someone who was into self-development and psychology, and like I like only that, right? Like this is my dream. And I married someone who's like completely opposite. He's like really silly and outgoing that, but he compliments me, right? And it's not necessarily what's not what I wanted that as someone who's into psychology, but it's not what I needed because that would have been a really boring life if we're both
Yeah.
in it, right? So
Yeah.
what actually matters, do you think?
Yeah, I think a lot of us think we need to find our mirror, right? And you said it exactly right. We don't need to find our mirror. We need to find somebody complementary to us, somebody that will bring out strengths that you didn't even know you had. Somebody that may point out flaws that you didn't know you had or make you aware of it and challenge you in ways and annoy you and frustrate you also. But I think what I really try to focus on is core values, and core values are different for everybody. Generally, obviously I only work with Muslim clients, so faith is a big core value for most of my clients. Like having somebody that values faith the same way you do, somebody that practices it in their daily life the same way you do, or wants to grow in the direction you want to grow in, that can be a core value. For some people, like health is a core value. They like, it's not that they just like to go to the gym, like living an active and health conscious lifestyle is just a part of, who they are, and finding somebody that aligns on that value and, setting themselves up for their future. What I tell people not to really think about is like hobbies. I think a lot of people fall into the trope of like, I need somebody that likes the same music I do, watches the same TV shows I do. We have hobbies in common. And sure, like that's fun and it's a bonus, but it is absolutely not necessary. And I can tell you, like, having the same hobbies, unless, like I said, it is really a core value. Like sometimes hobbies can be a part of your core values depending on what it is. Um, but for the most part, like you don't need to be into the same things. And it's so easy to like dismiss somebody of like, oh, I really like to travel and they don't really like to, or like, I really like this type of genre and they're not really into it. So I don't think it's a good fit. It's so easy to like place a lot of weight on like a very superficial part of a person. So yeah, really focusing on values and finding somebody complementary to you, not the same person as you. This is the easiest way to identify. This is my like trick. If you don't know what kind of person is going to be right for you, think about the people in your life. These could be your best friends or family members who, when you're around them, they bring out the best in you. You feel really good. You feel like their energy is bringing out a really nice energy in you. You value like the character traits that they have and admire a lot of the character traits that they have. So like think about those people and how they make you feel, and then look for that in a spouse.
Hmm. Yes. Okay, I love that, and I'm trying to put myself in my audience's mind, and I think the question that's going to come up, yeah, like Huda, that's nice, but there's not enough men, and there's not enough, good men, so it's kind of a luxury to sit here and talk about all this stuff. But what are your thoughts on that? Because I have a lot of,
Um,
I want to hear your thoughts.
yeah, no, I mean, I as a matchmaker, I deal with this all the time of like having so many incredible women and then really having to dig and search far and wide to find men that are, equally as great.
Mhm.
So I have two thoughts. Number one, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala plans everything.
Yeah,
We can do it, it's important to do your part and to put yourself in the right spaces and to, make dua. But at the end of the day, what is written for you will come. So me and nobody else can create something that isn't already written for you. So I'm just a facilitator. And you're also a facilitator in your own life. And so it's really, really important to have that understanding and that belief that like, yes, this is hard, especially if you're in the struggle and you've been in the struggle for a while of trying to find the right person. I know that it is so hard. It's so tough to sit and tell somebody like, oh, but like Allah's got you. Like it's so hard, but it's true. Like you just have to put your faith in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that when the person that's meant for you will come, they will come. And the relationships that haven't worked out, there was a reason for that. And you may not see it and you may not understand it yet, but you have to hold on to that belief as much as you can because it's the only thing that will help when you feel really hopeless. And number two, it's true. I do think that there is like a disconnect between the way Muslim men and Muslim women operate as far as finding a spouse. I think men find it a lot easier to like go on dating apps and go for kind of a less serious approach. I have so many thoughts on why that is and kind of how our parents set us up for this disaster and kind of this crisis, but there really is a crisis. And so my advice is this, aside from putting your belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, get out of your comfort zone. Like this is hard to do and I know it's hard to do, but you need to like network, honestly. You need to network, you need to go to spaces that, are fun for you and something that aligns with who you are as a person and just go out there and try to meet people. And you need to be open about the fact that you're looking to meet someone. I think a lot of us, and I think this has gotten better over time, but I think a lot of us are really shy or kind of embarrassed to let people know like, hey, I'm single and I really want to meet somebody. But if you're open with that to like your friends and people that you meet, like they'll have you in mind. And, say they meet this really great guy, they'll know like, oh yeah, so and so actually mentioned that they were looking. Let me see. Like, I think it's really hard to do, but it's really important to just be open in the process as far as telling people like, yo, I'm trying to get married. Do you know somebody?
yeah, yeah. Now, when there's a bunch of people listening who have like different experiences with this, but what's coming to mind is someone will be like, well, yeah, I am open. I'm telling all my friends, I'm telling all my shuyukh in my community, and no one's helping me and no one's doing this. And there's two things I want to add onto that. There's a very big aspect in terms of your mindset and dua and your relationship with Allah and how things work. And it's not just the piece of putting yourself out there. It's a very big piece of it is how you show up, your relationship with your du'as, and when it comes to marriage, how powerful that is. Because if you're just relying on the evidence of this world of like, well, there's not enough men here, you're not going to find it because cognitive bias will show you that there is not enough and it'll continue proving to it, and then you'll get hopeless, and then your dua will be very watered down and you won't actually see the results. So yes, of course, 100% go like, do matchmaking with Huda, do all these things, put yourself out there. And at the same time, if you're feeling hopeless and just like drained and just tired and exhausted, there's work to be done there before doing that, because this work is what contributes to a very healthy, successful marriage. And if this you're already giving up at this point, it's going to feel very hard. Even if you get matched with someone you like, your brain's going to sabotage it in one way or the other. So I just want to
100%.
add that piece. There's like a
100%.
whole, yeah, there's so many pieces to this, and it's not just one or the other. So if you hear this and you're like, well, I've already tried that, there's something else that's going on. And so there's always pieces to the puzzle to think about.
Yeah, no, you're so right. I really believe in like kind of the energy that you put out is the energy that you're going to get back. So, like you said, if you're like exhausted and jaded, then there's maybe something to be done where it's taking a step back. Um, reevaluating your relationship with your dog and with yourself and with this process. And sometimes that means like putting a pause on it altogether until your mindset is ready to meet somebody.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. What is the hardest thing that even let's say you do match with someone, that you match people up, and what do you see that maybe does not work out or like the most common struggles that couples go through?
I think communication can be a really, really big barrier sometimes. What I've seen is, and again, I will blame everything on like social media and dating
Yeah,
apps if I can.
yeah, me
I've
too.
actually really seen that people actually don't know or possess the skill of like communication anymore.
Mhm.
It's vanished. Um, I think we're very used to like instant gratification. So a lot of us will have the expectation of like, well, if I send a text and they don't respond right away, then like they're not into me, or like they're being rude, or they're being dismissive. And, or, just people not knowing that like, phone calls and FaceTimes and meeting in person is just as important as like a text conversation. And sometimes that's not the best way to get to know somebody. So just all these barriers in communication come up, again and again and again. And that's fine. Like that's the matchmaker's job beyond just like sending you a match and finding somebody is helping you kind of get past these things, right? So a lot of the times I'll have to like give my clients like a reminder or a nudge of like, hey, have you like reached out to them? Have you guys initiated a phone call? Have you initiated, set up a time to meet? A lot of people get caught up and like hung up on that like bridge between, because a lot of it is long distance, like not necessarily everybody's in the same city or state. And so they'll set off texting and on the phone, and then there's like this big waiting period before you actually meet in person for many reasons. Sometimes like the girl's waiting for the guy to initiate, the guy doesn't for several reasons, yada yada yada. And so kind of just encouraging people to take the right and necessary steps in like a timely manner is very important.
Yes.
But yeah, communication and kind of how to do it and when to do it and what's appropriate and what isn't appropriate is definitely kind of a learning process.
Yeah, yeah. And what you're mentioning, all of this ties back to how secure you feel in yourself. How are you operating from your ego, or are you operating from like, are we playing text games, or are you just like, hey, like just get over your ego and text them first? And
Yeah. Yeah.
all of this has to do with your relationship with yourself. And if that's not there, like what she mentioned, like communication is going to be a huge issue, because communication is more about, do you feel safe being yourself and actually saying what's on your mind, or is it, oh, I was told I shouldn't text first because then that would look like I'm chasing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
The
and I don't want to
games
look
of it
like I'm
all.
chasing. And it's like, girl, nobody cares. Like just
I
text.
know. I know.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
always tell my clients, like, I am the last person that's going to suggest you play any type of game. At
yeah,
the end of the day, you want to know, is the real you compatible with the real them? Not
yeah.
the version you're displaying of yourself or the version they're displaying of themselves. You want to find somebody where you are 100% yourself. If that's, and whatever that may be, like, if you have to overthink and calculate and play games, then that person is probably not going to be the right person for you. You want them to meet you where you are and accept you as you are.
Right, yeah. And if you are playing games, you're putting on an image of who they think you are, and they're gonna, even if they do like you for that, that's not like when you get
That's not
married, what do you think's
you.
gonna happen? Yeah, so,
Yeah,
yeah,
exactly. It's not you. And
yeah,
and you just, yeah, like you don't want to start off on that footing. If you're genuinely serious and looking for like a marriage and a long-term relationship, like why start off on that footing? I don't it doesn't make sense.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And another question on this is like, okay, so what is marriage actually like? Like, because you've had two kids, mashallah, and you're in it, you're really in it. So what what's how do I say this? My question is more of, sometimes it's hard that people don't really get what marriage is and how hard it can be.
Yeah.
So what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I tell this to my friends, my anybody that'll listen, basically, like marriage is not what a lot of us probably think it is. I think, especially if you're somebody like me who grew up watching rom-coms, you think like you get married, you're living with your best friend, it's like a slumber party every day, and you're gonna have snacks and giggles. And it is not that. Sometimes it's that. Like sometimes you're really vibing and having a good time, but a lot of it is really mundane. You still got to go to work. You still got to pay the bills. You still have to take care of your health. Sometimes you're going to get along and it's going to feel really great. Sometimes you're going to hate them and you're going to question, like, why did I marry this person? Like, are they still right for me? Like, at the end of the day, you're still two people who are going through the ups and downs of life. but you also have to deal with somebody else's ups and downs in life. And that's not easy. It's really not easy. And so that's why it's so important that when you make the choice to commit to this person, the core values are there, because if they're not, you're going to have no foundation to build off of, and you'll have no foundation that'll get you through the tough times, especially when there's kids and like, or if somebody loses their job, or somebody loses a family member, things that can be really difficult and really shake up somebody's life. Like if you don't have the foundation there, it's going to be so hard to navigate that. Trust me, your hobby's not going to get you through that. Like they like the same music. That's going to do nothing to get you through kind of some of the curveballs life can throw at you. But yeah, a lot of it is just really mundane. And I've met so many people who, especially after, 1, 2, 3, 4 years of marriage, they're like, I don't know if like we're still right for each other. It's not really fun anymore. And I really try to encourage people like, listen, are the core values still there? Is there still respect in the marriage? Is there love somewhere in the marriage? There might be hate at the same time. I'm not gonna lie to you. You might you might have these periods of really questioning, like, I don't know if this person is still my person. But if you have those things there and you have respect in the marriage, you can work through it. And those times will come in every single relationship. It doesn't mean your relationship is wrong. It doesn't mean you married the right person. And of course, I'm not talking about like extreme things like abuse, or, I'm not obviously not talking about those things. I'm just talking about some of the things that will happen in every marriage.
Yeah, yeah. And what are the best things you can do as a single person to prepare for something like this? Like I know, I notice that many people romanticize marriage and think it's the way out to feel better. And especially in our Muslim culture, is just we needed to fix that. There's so much that we're like, okay, once I get married, I'll feel taken care of and all of this. And we look at the homegirl's not even taking care of herself at home. She's like
Exactly.
wrecked in so many other ways. Yeah.
That's the solution. First of all, people need to stop assuming marriage is a solution to any part of your life. It's not.
No.
Marriage is a blessing and it's a huge barakah and it's a complement to your life, but it's not completing you. You need to be a whole person first. You need to be a secure person first. And I'm not saying that like you have to achieve this unattainable version of yourself. We're always going to be growing and evolving and changing, and that's totally fine. But I think the best place to be when looking for a spouse is to feel fulfillment in your own life, because then you're not looking for somebody that has to fill some gap or some hole that you feel. You get to just appreciate that person for who they are and appreciate the role that they can play in your life in as an addition, not as something that you feel like you're missing and need to fill. So come try to find a place of fulfillment in your life, and just see what happens.
Yeah. And for the avoidant attachments that are listening, this is not saying that like you have to reach perfection before you get started. Like you have to, it's more about taking responsibility for how you feel, taking responsibility for like your own health and well-being and your happiness and all of that. And you grow with that, right? And but it's not like once I get married, that's it. I can this
I've
bliss.
I've,
Yeah.
I've reached the pinnacle of
Yeah.
perfection. Of course
Yeah, yeah.
not.
Right. And
Nobody
especially
ever will get there.
yeah,
Trust
and
me.
there's this socialization that, women are more worthy if they're married. So they're kind of the ego kind of looks for that to escape. And as long as you're aware of all of it, it will help you go into a marriage more securely and more manageable, I guess is the word. Yeah. And it's because
Yeah.
it's
I,
not mm,
I'm gonna add a bit of like real world advice that I give to my friends that are about to get married. Like if everybody has difficulty in their life. Some of us have traumas from various things, a lot of us from our parents and from our culture.
mhm,
What I always tell somebody is like, when you're getting to know, this is specifically for the women, although I think it can apply to men too. This is just like some real like big sister advice, okay? If you're meeting somebody and things are going really well, don't trauma dump on them thinking that they're always going to be this confidant and this person that like for example, if like your dad drives you nuts, okay, your parents, you have a complicated relationship with them, they drive you nuts, you meet this guy and you start like venting to them about your parents and kind of leaning on them and whatever, don't do it. Even if you get married to this person, you don't want them to have that over your head, okay? Like just don't, your partner, you love them, you trust them, but don't trauma dump on them things that like you may evolve and grow from and have totally different feelings from like 5 years into the future. But that person that you're getting to know isn't going to have that same relationship and same journey with like the trauma or the people in your life. So they're going to have one impression and you may grow and evolve and they're still going to have that impression. So if there's one thing I can advise people to do is just like don't trauma dump thinking that like they're always going to have your back and they will, but there will come a time when you've moved on and they haven't. And that's a really difficult and frustrating thing to navigate. So that's just like my advice.
That's yeah, amazing. Yeah. And don't use them as your therapist. They're not your therapist.
They're not.
Yeah.
Oh, that's another thing. Your spouse is not your everything. They're not your all your friends. They're not your gal pals. They're not your whatever. They're your boy, whatever. Like your
Mhm.
spouse is your spouse, and that serves as a very wonderful and specific part of your life. But don't neglect the other parts of your life. Don't neglect your friends. Don't neglect your family. Don't neglect your therapist. Whatever it is that helps you feel complete in your life. Don't think that like getting married is like, all right, I don't need all these things anymore because you
Yeah.
do.
Yeah. And the brain is very tricky because it's always looking for a way out of the human experience. I don't want to feel this anymore. Let me just get married and get out of this. But it's just it never ends. So
Oh, yeah, absolutely never ends.
yeah, yeah. Okay. I think we're almost at time here. So Huda, I one last thing, like I think when it comes to the balance of like what's the balance of tawakkul and like actually, tawakkuling on Allah, but also like doing my part. What's the balance? What do you think? What do you think about that?
I think honestly, the balance is different for everybody. I
Mhm.
think do what feels like, do what like you're capable of. I think challenging yourself to meet people and to put yourself in places maybe you're not comfortable with, trying a service like a matchmaker or going on an app, whatever it may be, putting yourself in spaces where you may be able to meet somebody is really important. And the tawakkul is equally important. But if you're sitting on your couch like a princess thinking that like Prince Charming is just gonna like show up, that's probably not gonna happen.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I think that that balance is different for everybody. I think just at the end of the day, if you can tell yourself like, no, I really tried, I really did my best, and you're confident in that, then you'll know.
Yeah, yeah. And I notice that women who do go out of their way to out of their comfort zone and put themselves out there and do the hard part of being uncomfortable sometimes does get them married. It does get them the person that they want because they're challenging and they're evolving as they go and they, get triggered and solve that trigger and all that. So it's just the process, right? And I tell everyone that this process is what will help you have a beautiful marriage because you're building up the emotional capacity to handle things that you wouldn't normally handle.
Yeah, absolutely. You're
Yeah.
totally right.
Yes. Okay. All right. So Huda, how do we find you? What's all the things? Tell us everything.
Yeah. Yeah. So if you just want to find me on Instagram, it's Instagram at what's hoodie. That is from when I was like 16 years old, and I'm attached to it now. And if you're looking for matchmaking and would like to sign up for my service, it's www.findloveia.com.
Nice. And how does it really quick, how does that work? The matchmaking stuff.
Yeah, yeah. So I have trained a team of matchmakers who I work with. We're like a team essentially, and we have team meetings like twice a week and all of that. So you won't always necessarily work directly with me, especially lately because there's been a huge influx of people after the show. But basically, once you sign up, you are paired with a matchmaker who will get to know you and get to know your preferences, and then our team will go to work trying to find you the best person and do our best to help you along the process as well.
Yes. Okay. Perfect. And it's definitely worth the investment because it'll save you a lot of time scrolling through apps and just,
Yeah,
you handpicked,
inshallah.
right? So inshallah. Okay. Well, yes, and definitely check out the Hulu show, Muslim Matchmaker. I think it's really fun to just watch and talk to your friends about and analyze. So thank you.
Yeah,
Thank
definitely.
you so much, Huda, for coming. And I really appreciate you for taking the time to tell us all your wisdom and the big
Yes,
stuff. And
of
thank
course.
you.
This was such a nice chat.
Yes, thank you. All right, Assalamu alaikum.
And